we've had a few new vessels built under TVIB's program. So the new construction, I'm going to give you an overview of the general process, if you will. The biggest thing I can tell you about the new construction process is communication. Communicate early and often. Make sure people are on the same page and know when things are going to happen. New construction projects, you don't decide on Friday that you're going to do one in 2 weeks. These are discussions that happen way in advance. Finances, all these things are talked about. So these aren't surprise events. They're very planned and executed. Well, under the Subchapter M protocol, it should be planned and executed the same way. That way we don't end up at the end of a boat being built. You have a multi-million-dollar boat, you're ready to put to work and find out that maybe a whole lot of steps were missed and the boat can't go to work yet. That doesn't help you at all. But with some effort, we can make sure that those kind of issues don't happen. So pre-construction meetings, they need to be attended by a shipyard, obviously, the vessel owner, TVIB surveyor, the Coast Guard, and other surveying parties as needed. So they'll all want to be there, have a meeting, whether it be the Coast Guard office or where it be, doesn't matter. Have a meeting to understand these things, which are establish the time frames for key construction phases. You're going to want to identify what documentation the Coast Guard is going to want, establish who's taking the lead for the COI application, and remember to submit that as soon as possible. But the COI application should be no less than 90 days before the desired COI issuance date. No different than our implementation period. You still have your 90 days that you have to do and your 30 days. Only difference in a new construction is everyone knows a little bit more about what's going on because of the phases that you're in. The surveyor is going to have to do multiple verification visits. So TVIB certified dry dock ISC surveyor or an appropriately credentialed NAMS or SAM surveyor. They're going to have to attend the vessel to verify the construction is following the plans, that craftsmanship is being checked, ensure that all the welding and fitting, all the components as the design plans show, and witness the testing of key components during the assembly. So you can see that, you know, over the course of construction of a vessel, there's going to be a lot of visits to do all these different parts. And this is where you talk about in your pre-construction meeting, where those are going to happen, those time frames, approximate time frames, because there are setbacks and there are things that slow things down. We all know that happens. You want to make sure that you're able to be there when you're supposed to be there. And sometimes that's just kind of planning things out ahead that we know. We think, well, approximately mid-March we'll be at X phase. These are the kind of things that the shipyard should be able to tell you. There'll have to be a subpart B survey, or what we call the annual survey, only there's not an annual survey because the boat hadn't been built yet. So we'll call it the topside survey. So the 137, 215, and 220 requirements, that has to be done by a TVIB certified annual surveyor or a TVIB accepted internal surveyor. And you need to survey the vessel shortly before the vessel is completed. To note that it's not uncommon for this to take place over multiple days as things are completed. But don't think that you can't spread this apart over multiple days, because if you have in your TSMS that, you know, surveys are going to take place as one event, that really is designed for your annual survey process, not really for new construction. So if you have a way to get certain components marked off as you go, and, you know, over the course of maybe a couple of weeks, you could probably knock out your survey pretty easily. Or you can do it all in one day towards the end, whichever way you prefer. Survey report will be part of the verification of compliance. There should be no findings at the end. Obviously, new vessel, if there are findings, well, that's part of your verification process. So let's get it right before the boat goes into service. And you're going to submit the report as soon as possible after performing the survey. We'll review that survey. We expedite those reviews because they're very time sensitive. Usually within 24 hours, we'll get those put out. TVIB accepted survey is needed before the COI is issued. Then you'll have an external vessel audit will have to happen. That's because the boat hasn't operated yet, right? So it has to be performed within 6 months of the COI issuance. The Coast Guard will issue a 835 to track that requirement. They'll make it Code C, so don't be surprised by that because the Coast Guard has to clear it. But you'll follow your normal audit protocol within 6 months. Don't push it any further than 5 months after you get your COI or after you start operating the boat. And that's because we want to make sure we allow enough time for us to process your report, get corrective action plans if there are any, and then get a final report to the Coast Guard by the due date. Of course, you do need to not do it like 2 weeks after the boat starts operating either. The 835 won't say that, but you need to allow time for some records and some things to be audited, to be developed. So allow the boat to operate. In my opinion, 90 days is where I would let that boat operate and then do an audit about that point. Documents to be submitted to TBI for new construction. There'll be a construction verification. So a thorough report that includes the dates attended, components and systems reviewed, like on those dates, any notes on observations, instructions that are given, pictures if they're necessary, and make sure that you have the requirements of 137, 135 covered as well. So that's the list of what has to be in a report. It's like, you know, your vessel name, official number, all that stuff. The survey report, and that's the one to achieve the 137, 215, and 220 requirements. So again, that's the one that we would have reviewed and accepted by this point. So construction verification letter, survey report, a verification of compliance with design standards. So that's going to be done by a PE, naval architect, or the Coast Guard. I will tell you that you can submit and have the Coast Guard do that review because it's in the regulations, but that's always been done by the PE and naval architect at this point for a TSMS option vessel. I think you're going to find the reason behind that is because it's a much more nimble process than you're going to get through the Coast Guard. You'll have to have a copy of the stability documentation sent to TVIB, a copy of the vessel drawings package, and then of course the add remove form to add the vessel to the TSMS certificate. That needs to be done as soon as all the information is available. So while that's the last bullet point, you don't really need to wait until the last. There's just a list of things that have to come to us, but make sure that add vessel happens as soon as possible. Really, when the surveyor gets ready to do that survey, the topside survey, I should say, if that boat really needs to be on the TVA by that point. So the letter from the surveyor, you can see what it requires there. So this is separate than, you know, this construction verification. This letter actually is going to attest that materials used, welding methods, etc., are meeting those of the stamp plans, and that there's evidence of testing of key components, and there's evidence to complete operational testing, including sea trials, and a final delivery survey. So there have to be some sort of a letter that clearly articulates that from the surveyor. So number 2 and 3 on this chart right here, those have to be witnessed by a TVIB certified surveyor or the OCMI. So number 1 could be a NAMS or SAMS surveyor or somebody else as well. But 2 and 3 are specifically, they have to be witnessed by TVIB certified surveyor, not an internal surveyor that's accepted, a certified surveyor or OCMI. And I don't have the regulatory site up there, but if you go back into the regulations, you'll see where that requirement is. At the end, we draft up a letter. We basically go back and we list all the things that I just showed you in the preceding slides. This letter says that TVIB is the TPO for subject vessel, something along that line, and that we've received all of these documents and that we believe the vessel meets basically in the compliance of Subchapter M. We sign it. We send this letter to the OCMI representative that's handling the new construction. And then we say in here that, you know, if they need any of these documents, we'll facilitate getting them to them. But quite honestly, at this point, the Coast Guard already has all of these documents. Occasionally we find 1 or 2 they haven't gotten. Usually it's a survey. Any questions on the new construction?
Can the annual surveyor and the dry dock surveyor be the same person?
Yes, they can. Matter of fact, I think in most instances that's been the case. And honestly, it's really no different than once the boat gets a COI, it could be the same person as well. So.
Hey, Caleb, this is Rick Singley. I just have a comment regarding the same surveyor doing the new construction survey, the construction oversight survey, and the annual survey for the COI. In my opinion, I think that they need to be separated due to the fact that I think if the same person were to do it, you kind of lose your objectivity during the survey. You say, oh, well, you know, oh, I know that's there, or this is there. So it's just kind of a good to have a second set of eyes on the project or on the survey. It's kind of like auditing your own TSMS. You know, you're not allowed to write a TSMS and then do the first audit of it anyways. It just gives you that objectivity.
I think it's a good point. I think it's valid. And it may even be that, thank you for speaking up too, by the way, because I know you have experience with these, that really the focus of one surveyor is the construction, is really almost like a dry dock ISE person or an annual surveyor that's looking at most of this new construction stuff. The only different component of it is that annual survey, or that we'll call it pre-COI survey. And I think, you know, it may be a matter of timing that, you know, I'm focused on this, I need someone else to focus on that. You know, it could be. But I also understand what you're saying on the objectivity. It gives somebody else a different opportunity to take a look at the boat. Rick, while you've spoken, I know you've been through this a handful of times. I think each one goes just a fraction of a bit different, it seems like, depending on the customer and that type of thing. But do you have any extra thoughts that you would want to offer?
The only thing I really would like to say is, of course, communication, like you said, is key. Every Coast Guard unit is different, and every Coast Guard inspector is different. So, you know, the process, I think you just, although it can be tedious, you need to document as much as possible, whether it's going to be a physical survey or you document it with pictures, you document it with a video, something to provide that objective evidence that you've been there and witnessed these things, such as bluing of the shaft couplings and the prop. You know, it just goes on and on. Alignment of the engines, alignment of the shafts, machinery installation. So I don't think that there's actual any kind of written or documented guidance as far as what you're supposed to see in the construction process. So it's just been our take that you need to witness as much as you can and document it, because after the package is submitted and the Coast Guard reviews it, you don't want to have questions come back on you and say, well, I think that was done, or have to do it all over again because something was missed. So I think it's just very important to, like I said, to document all that. And the last thing would be that we found is slowing things down is getting those plans approved. There's always some last minute changes in the plans, piping, one thing or another. So just stay on the shipyard or the naval architect to get you those approved plans as quickly as possible. And hopefully things will go well.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. And what you just described a minute ago is, you know, there's not really a list of what you got to look at, but there's evidence of successful testing of key components during a vessel assembly. So if you're not comfortable deciding and knowing what are the things I need to look at to a new construction, then you're not the right person to be doing a new construction. If you know the things that you're going to look at, then, you know, you should, this is part of your early on meetings. So you can be sharing, you know, with the shipyard and the owner, here are the things that I'm going to want to look at. Here are the list of things here are the times that I have to be present, etc. So these are why these meetings happen. These meetings don't happen so everybody tells you exactly everything you're going to do. You have to make sure you have deliverables back the other way, because you're going to have the surveyor and you have responsibilities for it. So I'll just very briefly explain, you go through and you're inspecting this vessel during various phases. Well, they went out and I presume everyone's generally familiar with keel coolers and how there's a box kind of inset back. Well, they didn't follow the drawings. They didn't inset back far enough, and the keel coolers were actually extending out beyond the outer part of the hull. I can't remember how much, but it was very, very notable. It was notable enough that they actually had to stop where they were on the construction and then go back, reconstruct those boxes and extend them back in. I want to say they had to inset them back about another 8 inches. It was off. When I say off, it wasn't just off like an inch or two. It was very, very notable, and it's costly too because the shipyard didn't follow the design plans. So it slowed the shipyard down, obviously, on the delivery date. So that's why don't think just because the shipyard's building and there's plans, everything's going to go right, because in that case, it didn't.
Hey, Caleb, it's Adam Foray. How does this
Yes.
process apply to boats that are considered an existing vessel? So the keel being laid prior to July 2017.
Okay, so that's a really good question too, Adam. I appreciate that. We recently had a boat that had an existing keel, but the company chose to go ahead and build to some of the new vessel requirements, not all, but some of the new vessel requirements. In that particular case, we thought it was important to go ahead and follow this process to at least document that some of the new vessel things were done, but we were very clear in this example letter that I've got up here on the screen. We were very clear in there that it was considered an existing vessel. That sector actually had a letter issued to that shipyard saying that the hull number was an existing keel. So we kind of closed all the loops. And I just felt that was important because what I didn't want as a TPO anyway is 5 years down the road when this boat comes to COI renewal, somebody somewhere looks at it and goes, wait a minute, this should have been a new vessel. So we just want everything really clearly articulated right up front why this boat is an existing vessel. But if it's an existing keel, this really changes a lot. And I would just talk to us. It's going to vary from OCMI to OCMI, what they want or may not want, because they're probably going to be stuck in the new construction mindset, even if it's an existing vessel. We don't have to have that same level of oversight for an existing keel. You need your COI in order to maintain your percentages. So once you launch that boat and puts it out into work, you have that to be mindful of. Now, after we reach 100%, that changes that scenario a little bit because everyone's going to have a COI to go to work at that point. So you won't be able to launch a boat and not have a COI. I'll leave you with this thought on new construction. As soon as you know you're going to have a new vessel built, reach out to one of the operations team members and let us get you on the right track of what TVIB is going to need throughout the process.